everybody, welcome back. Pop Retro. Pop Retro 1 at Twitter and Instagram. Facebook.com/PopRetro1. And you can also find me at Patreon.com/PopRetro if you want to check that out. In the middle here of watching some Magnum PI. I've been watching season 1. I'm working on a review for season 1 of Magnum PI from 1981. Super fun 80s stuff, the PI genre. And Magnum PI went off the air in 1988. And by the end of the 80s, the PI genre was really kind of dead. There was no more, as far as I can remember, there were no more PI shows on TV. And it was just something that was really popular throughout the 60s and 70s and the 80s. But by the late 80s, it really had gone downhill and people just weren't interested anymore, I guess. But thankfully, Vik Rubenfeld came along in 1989 to deliver us from this dearth of PI entertainments to give us Alien Private Eye. Now, Alien Private Eye, you're not going to believe this, but this movie from the late 80s, super low budget, was released on Blu-ray recently. Blu-ray by Vinegar Syndrome. So, what is this movie about? Okay, basically, he's a private eye, but guess what? He's also an alien. How do we know he's an alien? He's got pointy ears, which you really can't tell he's got pointy ears because his hair covers it up, and also his fedora that he wears everywhere, whether he's fighting, whether he's having sex with the girl, he's wearing the fedora. And the reason why is because he's covering up his ears. That's the only tell that you know that these people are aliens. And so, other than that, he is just a pretty regular guy, a kickboxing, ass-kicking private investigator. And so, essentially, from his home planet, somehow there's this disc that has come down that has been broken in half, and this woman, she's somehow winds up with half of it. And if you put both halves together, you have this tool that allows you to basically destroy human civilization via drugs. Okay? And so, I mean, silly stuff, but that's what drives the plot. Now, it's tough to review it because it's like, is this a good movie? Well, I mean, I would not recommend this to like my dad or my mom or my sister. But if you're a fan of the old bad movie cinema, then you might like Alien Private Eye. Now, it's listed as coming out in 1989. From what I can glean from the commentaries and interviews and such, it sounds like it was released overseas in 1989 and then didn't make it over to America. I believe it was released straight to video, VHS, in 1990. And so if you look it up online, you'll see a 1990 date for this movie, like on IMDb and places like that. I go with Vinegar Syndrome. They're pretty good at placing the dates, so they have 1989. However, in the credits say copyright 1987. So this thing may have been worked on for quite a while throughout the last couple of years of the 1980s and was finally finished and produced and sent out into the world for all of us to enjoy sometime around 1989 and then 1990 for America. So Nicholas Hill plays Lemro. He is a martial artist and a dancer, and this was I believe his first movie. And you can tell, I mean, he's not a great actor, very stiff. All the acting is over the top stiff, and I love it. It's the first scene in this movie shows these hoods. They've just stolen, I don't know, a woman's purse, and they're running down the sidewalk. And 1 minute and 2 seconds into the movie, and I had to pause it and watch it back about 5 times because it's so hilarious, because he runs past these this hoodlum runs past these women walking on this busy sidewalk and kind of just bumps into them a little bit and knocks them over. One woman just kind of falls over, all right. And the other one, she gets knocked over, but she does like I guess you'd call it a botch in pro wrestling. You'd call it a flop in the NBA in basketball, because she like gets hit and kind of stumbles to one side, and then she just absolutely throws herself up against this concrete wall. And so it was just a total funny mess of choreography. And so that was 1 minute and 2 seconds of the movie. And right then I was like, you know what, this is going to be fun. No matter, how low budget or how bad it is, it's going to be fun. So, and for low budget, there's a lot of charm when it comes to low budget of this era, especially that it's shot on film, and this was shot on film. And so it's shot very nice. It looks good. And for the low budget, they used every cent of it. You can see it up there on the screen. There's a lot of good setups, a lot of good sets and settings, and there's a car chase. So Nicholas Hill, if you're somebody who, I don't know, is aware of Vinegar Syndrome, the boutique label that is putting out a lot of this stuff, one of their partner labels called Culture Shock released a movie from 1989 also called Game of Survival, and that's Nicholas Hill also in that. And so both of these movies dated roughly 1989, and he was in both of them. And so from his interview, he had done like a Wendy's commercial for like a chicken nugget campaign, and so this was his big shot. And again, it just reminds me of like Van Damme when Van Damme was new, and he was kind of stiff, and his acting was kind of, it wasn't his strongest suit, but he was so physical, and he could do the moves, and he did the dance, and he just wasn't afraid to do all this stuff. And that's what Nicholas Hill reminds me of. Brenda Winston, she is Renee, and she plays the female lead in this. Don Richardson, I think, is who plays the evil alien, and he's super over the top. In fact, Brenda Winston, I think she may be the most, I don't know, down to earth, no pun intended, performance in Alien Private Eye. She's she's kind of like moderating her approach, but everybody else is just going for broke, and it's hilarious. And a woman named Francine Lapensée plays a smaller role as a woman named Delilah in this movie. And I just wanted to mention her because around the same time in 1990, she was in a film called Demon Wind, which was also put out by Vinegar Syndrome. And so there's some connections here. I don't know. This was based on an idea. The movie was that it sounds like that Vik Rubenfeld, the writer, producer, and director of this movie, he had this idea back in college, and then he fleshed it out a little later when he was approached to make a movie. And so this was his first thing. But what's really interesting about Rubenfeld, and he's funny to listen to too. You never, in the commentary, and there's also an interview with him, a new interview. You never know what, I don't know, I always expect these commentaries and these interviews for movies like Alien Private Eye. I for some reason, I always expect them to come out and say, oh yeah, this is, yeah, I remember I did that. Yes. Okay. Let's talk about this thing. Like I expect them for some reason to be embarrassed. I don't know. 'Cause I think back of the things I did back in my 20s and go, oh yeah, I did do that. And, and I'm always surprised because usually they're not. And Rubenfeld is hilarious because he talks as if what he did here is just fantastic and great. And honestly, I'm like, man, I'm getting sold more and more just listening to him. He's a good salesman on this, and he made some good points. I mean, it's there's the 80s design, which I just love, that late 80s design of the fashion and the style and the set design and the clothing and the hairstyles and everything is just spot on, and it looks great. And this definitely is something that just completely fit in with the video store era. And Vik Rubenfeld went on after this to create the TV series Early Edition with Kyle Chandler. Do you remember that show? The show about the guy who gets the newspaper a day early, and so he knows what's going to happen. So he's has to save the world, whatever's going to happen. That ran for 4 seasons on CBS, and so he went from Alien Private Eye to a few years later creating or co-creating Early Edition, and of course writing, I guess, and producing on that show. So that's pretty impressive. And he now has a course on Udemy, Udemy. He's known as the suspense guru. So if you want to learn how to write suspensefully, Rubenfeld is a novelist. He created Early Edition. He created Alien Private Eye. And now he's teaching an online course on how to write and how to write with suspense, which you can find by searching that out, which he brings up a couple times in the commentary and in the interview. So anyhow, this is the disc, Alien Private Eye. Here's a look at this is the slip cover. That's almost inappropriate to show here on the YouTube, but Vinegar Syndrome releases always catch me off guard. This is the reverse art. I actually reversed the art. The other side looks like the slipcover, but this is the reverse art, which I assume probably is what the VHS art looked like. There's a look at the back. The extras do include the commentary track with Vik Rubenfeld, who goes by just Victor in the credits. Produced by Victor, Viktor. Directed by Victor. Which at first made me wonder if he was, embarrassed about, he didn't put his full name on the actual movie back in the late 80s, early 90s. But he's certainly proud of it now. And Master of Suspense, an interview with Vik Rubenfeld. And then the next interview is with the cinematographer, Jules V. Walther, which is a pretty good interview with him. And an interview with lead actor David Nico Hill. And so it is interesting listening to Hill, and he's 60 years old, he says in this interview, and he looks great. And he sounds better to me. Like, he sounds like he should be an actor now and go, and be like one of these older action guru stars or something in low budget features, because he still has a good look, and his outlook seems to be pretty good. He talked about in this interview about his issues he had around this time. He struggled, I think, with addiction issues, and was came out of a struggle home, or whatever. And so it's good to see him talking in this interview, and he found his way. He's happy and doing a lot of good things that, don't involve Hollywood. Maybe I should revise that and say, maybe you should just stay away from Hollywood, because as we all know, it can be a rough place to try to be in, try to live in. Here's a look at the inside, the disc, I should say. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Magnum PI may have ended in 1988, but in 1989, we got Alien Private Eye. And for that, I thank you, Vik Rubenfeld, and thank you, Vinegar Syndrome, for putting this out on Blu-ray disc. How and why does a movie get like this? get a Blu-ray release, get a high definition release. Well, you know, we're getting them these days, and it's pretty cool if you were a fan of this stuff growing up, which I was. So, all right, thanks for checking in, and I will check in again with you in just a little bit with some more haul videos and reviews, and I will see you then.